I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast with only deep-cut Doctor Who references, because this week we listened to The Sirens of Time.
Written by Nicholas Briggs.
Directed by Nicholas Briggs.
And released on July 19th, 1999.
And released on Nicholas Briggs.
I know, yeah. You go on the key crew on the TARDIS wiki, the little section they have at the top of audio or episode pages, and it's like writer Nicholas Briggs, director Nicholas Briggs, music Nicholas Briggs, sound Nicholas Briggs.
Well, I'm pretty sure at this time Big Finish was like 50% Nicholas Briggs anyway.
Yeah.
Just like in general. Don't forget starring Nicholas Briggs.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah,
so here we are. Big Finish audio number 1.
For Doctor Who, that is. I looked it up, maybe 15 minutes ago. Apparently the first Big Finish audio was a Bernice Summerfield story released in 1998, but this was their first Doctor Who audio.
Yeah, they acquired the rights in March, I believe, from what I was reading, and this audio went out in July, so there was a pretty quick turnaround on this, especially since nowadays the turnaround on these things is they record him 3 years in advance for Tom Baker because they're worried he's just going to drop dead at any minute.
Yeah, how old is Tom Baker now? He has to be in his late 80s.
He's got to be in his 80s, right?
If not his 90s.
He's 88. So
God.
Close. He's still around and kicking, though.
I know.
He's still around and kicking.
Yeah, he wrote, in quotes, that book a couple years ago, remember? What was it? The title is escaping me. Whatever, doesn't matter.
Was it Scratch Man?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking of.
I don't know how that just suddenly came to my mind out of nowhere.
Yeah, that book that had sort of been in limbo for many years. He didn't actually write it, apparently. He just put his name on the cover.
Yeah, he pulled a James Patterson.
Yeah.
Pulled a James Patterson. I mean, it kind of shows, honestly, that this was the first audio. It's pretty rough around the edges.
Yeah, it's a little rough. I think the format that they went for with this was good in theory, right? Because they had the 3 doctors. They had 5, 6, and 7. And so it's a 4-part story where the first 3 parts each focus on a single doctor, and then they all come together in part 4, which seems like a sound idea.
Yes.
Part 4 kind of goes off the rails a little bit. Most of it's dedicated to a massive exposition dump. You can't really call it exposition because it comes at the end, but sort of just a massive reveal.
Yeah, part 4 really drops the ball on getting all. So the first 5-10 minutes of part 4 I liked. That's when the doctors first get together. They're trying to figure out what's going on, and they're kind of working together and figuring things out. They're actually figuring it out for themselves. It's right around the 12 to 15 minute mark when they seem to have just completely lost all forethought and just have to have everything explained to them, that I'm kind of okay, I guess that's what we're doing now.
Right.
I also kind of found part 1 to be a little boring, although maybe in defense of the audio drama, that was because I was listening to it in public while sitting at the smog check place getting my car checked. So I was only really 75% paying attention to it.
Yeah, it's definitely something I can't do with these audios. I've realized is I have to basically just sit down, do nothing else, and pay attention only to the audio. I can't do anything else, or else I'll just not pay attention whatsoever. And I was reminded, just listening to this, I actually just listened to it right before, I just listened to the entire thing right before we started recording. But I was reminded how easy it is to stop paying attention You really just have to focus in. It's not like, maybe I shouldn't admit that I do this, but it's probably pretty damn obvious anyway, but it's not like a movie or a TV series where you can zone out for like 30 seconds and you can kind of jump back in pretty easily. This is more, you do that and you're like, okay, where am I?
Yeah, it's because, when you're watching TV or movie, you're 50% paying attention, is still paying attention to the audio 100%. But in the audio, since there's already 50% less stuff to be processing, you're 50% paying attention, it's just 50% paying attention to everything.
Right, and that might not be the case for the more audiobook style ones, but this is like a full cast. We should mention, the format-wise, this is like a full cast play, basically. And good for Big Finish. It really is a full cast because they got they got Sylvester McCoy, they got Peter Davison, they got Colin Baker, Yeah,
what else are they going to be doing during this time? I guess.
That's true.
They have other acting roles, but recording an audio drama is a much lower level of commitment than recording 26 episodes of a TV show.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially when you're only in 2 parts for this first one. Okay, so the next coming ones, it's one doctor all the way through, but for this one especially, it's you're only in 2 parts. You're only in 50% of the story.
True. Plus these 3, more than any of the other doctors at the time, I guess, who were still alive, were dedicated to being in Doctor Who stuff. Most of these people were in the Air Zone Solution. You know what I mean?
I guess. Sylvester McCoy in the Air Zone Solution?
No,
Colin Baker was.
Colin Baker was. Peter Davison was. Yes.
Sylvester McCoy wasn't, though.
No.
Man, I completely excised Air Zone Solution from my mind. Maybe because of that weird Colin Baker, Nicola Bryant romance they just insert.
Yeah, I watched it twice. God.
Or John Pertwee insisting he has to be in this thing, so they just write him in as some sort of weird cryptic mentor character who shows up and implies he knows everything that's going on, but just decides not to tell our main characters for some reason.
Yeah.
Which, all right, John, if that's what you want to do, man.
If that's how you want to go down in history.
As the guy who insisted on being in the Air Zone Solution.
Yeah, as the podcasters who insisted on watching the Air Zone Solution.
Look, name one other Doctor Who podcast who watched the Air Zone Solution. This is how you know we're dedicated to this craft.
But hey, speaking of going down in history, like we mentioned before, this is Big Finish's first Doctor Who story. This is the one that started it all in more ways than one, because looking at the cover here, this really just set the standard and set the style and tone for how Big Finish's covers would look. Now, I'm not sure, this is a little, kind of digging into history here, but since this was released in 1999, it came out on both CD and tape. I wonder what the tape cover looked like. Was it just a crop of what the CD cover was?
Yeah, I think it's just a crop. I've seen a tape cover, not this one specifically, but I've seen a tape cover before for Big Finish, and it's pretty much just a crop.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, well, I Google imaged the Sirens of Audio tape. It doesn't really have anything, but whatever. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I'm not sure they did tapes for very long.
Probably not, yes.
They just predominantly were on CDs for a long time, and then with the rise of the internet, they moved to downloads. They still sell CDs, I believe. Yeah, I believe so.
They're just not worth buying.
They make them in a lot lower quantity now because I think most people are downloading them, so they don't produce as many CDs, because that's one thing to consider with CDs is you have to produce the CD and
right. Big Finish is also pretty It's a pretty good online store. You don't really, unlike a lot of digital services nowadays, they just provide you with a download. There's no DRM. You don't have to be logged in. You don't need an internet connection. You can copy that sucker as much as you want. You can put it on your own CD if you want.
Yeah, if you want. I mean, that would like definitely be violating copy. Well, okay, putting it on a CD for your own use doesn't, I guess. Look, you know what? Back up. I'm not a copyright lawyer. Disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a copyright lawyer. But I don't think putting it on a CD for your own purposes, for your own use, is violating copyright. I think once you give that CD to someone else, is when it goes,
Yeah, I believe that is the case, yes.
But again, I'm not a copyright lawyer. My extent of copyright law is Googling, can I use the Doctor Who theme in my podcast 8 years ago.
It's interesting, though, that, like, yeah, putting it on your own CD and giving it to someone else is probably a little dubious, but it's like, you can buy a CD and lend it to someone and no one would bat an eye. You know, whatever. It's weird, but anyway, that's not what we're really here to discuss. It's peripheral to what we're here to discuss.
Yeah, we're here to talk about the Sirens of Time. Beware the Sirens of Time. Where am I now? Okay, so the story begins. So the story's in 4 parts. Nicholas Briggs apparently gave each part its own name, a la like the first 3 seasons of Doctor Who.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The episode titles, excuse me, that Nicholas Briggs gave the episodes are The Knights of Valicia, Ship of Destiny, Death of Wonder, and Nexus Point / Curse of the Temperon. I assume he hadn't decided which of the 2 he liked better for part 4. Apparently the overall title is inspired by the book The Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut.
Huh, that's interesting.
I've never read.
Neither have I. We should mention how we listen to these, and that the way we listen to these didn't include those titles, which was via Spotify.
The Spotify is clearly just a rip of the CD because it has all the CD tracks delineated.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
No. There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing, just to preempt this, because this is something that is throughout the entire audio. There's no real, like, I guess, dedication to doing anything really out there or interesting with the audio, but, there's sort of a, stereo or surround, like, effect to it, right? Which is nice throughout, right?
I mean, it's how to describe it plays it very safe, I think. Part of maybe the plot dumping at the end is because they didn't want to do they have a 3-Doctor story, but they didn't want to do something like exceedingly difficult for new listeners to get into. You know, this has a lot of, we mentioned jokingly in the intro that there's a lot of deep cut Doctor Who references in this, but nothing so integral to the story that you couldn't just listen to this without necessarily knowing anything about Doctor Who.
I guess that's true, yeah. I think your enjoyment would be hugely increased if you did know anything about Doctor Who, but yeah, that's true.
The biggest deep cut reference is like as soon as the episode starts with someone with a TARDIS landing on Gallifrey, and you're like, oh, this is going to be the Doctor, but no, it's Coordinator Vancelli, I think.
I think it's Vansel. I think it's just Vansel.
It's pronounced Vancel, I think. But he immediately lands and he's like, I'm part of the Celestial Intervention Agency. So there's your deep cut for you.
Yeah, the CIA. God. Don't forget, like, Type 70, nice machine. Yeah. Or what was the one you mentioned? Or the Chronivores.
The Chronivores they mentioned later. Well, because the supreme being in this episode is a distant cousin of the Chronivores, I think the 6th Doctor mentions.
Yeah, and it's like, this is Big Finish's first Doctor Who thing, so it's like, all right, it's our first go-around, make sure we know what we're talking about. Just throw in a Chronivore reference.
Yeah, for all three fans in the audience, like, woo, coronavirus!
I know that just a standing ovation when the cloister bells start going off.
Literally right at the beginning, the Seventh Doctor goes, "Oh, cloister bell? Oh no!" And then you like hear the cloister bell really softly. But yeah, everybody being like, "Yo, hell yeah, cloister bell going off."
Yeah, that reaction image that's like 15 years old at this point. The four guys on the couch. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I'll link it in the show notes.
They actually, this is completely unrelated, but they actually did a reunion of that picture. Like, it was a couple years ago. I think it was maybe 2019 or 2020. It's the same four guys. I think it's a different couch, but it's the same angle, the same poses.
I would assume it's not the same couch. I don't know. I guess it could be the same couch. Just hung on to it for like 10 years.
Anyway.
Yeah, anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Gallifrey, as part 1 opens, is in a state of emergency. It's being invaded by some unknown invaders.
Yeah. Unknown.
Another deep cut reference, they detect some Artron energy in the time distortion that the invaders are using to invade. Where did Artron energy originate, honestly? I can't even remember.
The Time Monster, I think? I want to say it was the Time Monster. Well, you know where we can look.
Yeah. The TARDIS Wiki.
Artron energy. The Deadly Assassin. First mentioned in the Deadly Assassin. A Gallifrey story. Makes sense, I suppose.
Yeah, the one that introduced the Matrix.
Anyway, Vansell mentions that the people who are invading have like absolute control over space and time. So they need to essentially send some messages back in time to try and prevent all of this from happening.
Yeah, I mean, what are the Time Lords even good for, right? There's this other race that has true control over space and time, just invading them.
They mention that the invaders have set up like a security shield that's preventing any TARDISes from traveling through, but there's one TARDIS on the outside still, and that belongs to who else but that nuisance known as the Doctor.
It's the Master. That would actually have been really interesting, as if like Big Finish started this audio range, but it actually followed the Master. Or like the Monk or someone, or the Ronnie. Or literally any of the other Time Lord characters that had been introduced up until this point.
I mean, that would have been an extremely ballsy maneuver and probably wouldn't have necessarily worked in their favor.
Yeah, probably would have failed completely. Well, like we mentioned, the cloister bells start going off in the Seventh Doctor's TARDIS.
Yeah, so he lands on an unknown planet. And we actually never find out the name of this planet. The like moment before someone's going to tell us, they just go, yeah, I don't think it ever actually had a name.
Yeah. He hears someone in distress, so he heads on over to where the voice is coming from and finds Elena. No, it's Elena.
Oh, no, Elena. No, it's just Elena. Or is it Elena? Because I think Elena is her like... I don't actually. No, I think
this is Elena.
And then it's Helen in part 2,
and Ellie in part 3. But her real name is I don't remember. It's
Liana.
Lonnie. Like yeah, something like that.
Liania, something like that. Anyway, so he meets Elena.
And he's like, hey, who are you and where am I? And she's like, she just evades the answer. Evades.
And then he says something like, I can't help but feeling like I've met you before. And she's like, no,
you
I've
haven't.
never met you. I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, huh, if you say so.
They run.
They then meet Sancroft.
Well, I think don't they run into the old woman first?
Ruthly, maybe.
I think they do. They just come across her.
So.
I forget exactly what occurs between them.
Ruthly says something like, hey, you'll never be able to save Elenia. And the doctor's like, yeah, watch me and my umbrella.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, bring back the Seventh Doctor's umbrella. Not bring back so much as, like, just utilizing.
As if they could have the Seventh Doctor without his umbrella. Like,
they could have. But just also you like just a very Dragonfire moment, you know, just using it to save people.
No, that's a deep cut.
Yeah, how I remember that is beyond me. Anyway, Ruthly is in charge of taking care of this guy named Sancroft.
Yeah, who I thought was Bancroft at first, but because Ruthly is like so impossible to understand.
Right. Their conversation amounts to like basically Ruthly, you know, she's been tasked with taking care of Sancroft, but she doesn't like it. She's sort of insinuating that, oh, maybe one day I'll forget to you know,
I'll forget to help you out.
Right. And you'll just be left to rot in your own filth.
And Sancroft is like, yeah, I don't believe
Yeah,
you.
Sancroft doesn't really seem to understand what's going on around him. I mean, he does. Like, you find out later who he is and, you know, type thing. But, like, I don't know. He just doesn't seem to be fully with it.
He's old, man. Cut him some slack.
Mm-hmm. Well, so we learn also, I believe, in this conversation that there is a force field around the planet, but it's failing and ships are coming through.
So a ship comes to crash near the Doctor, and he's like, "We need to get out of here." So he tries to get back into the TARDIS, only to find out, oh no, that it's not opening for him. He can't open the door.
Right, he's locked out, and this is a constant through all the time periods that we're about to go through, so that the Doctor is locked out. That actually is like an interesting utilization of something that the earliest eras of Doctor Who, you know, the first and second Doctor, and to an extent the third Doctor, always did, which is that, you know, I guess in order to evade the question of like, well, why don't they just leave type thing, they always had like the TARDIS be put out of commission either via some sort of force field or I think it like fell off a cliff at one point, or
yeah, that was in Curse of Peladon, or Monster of Peladon, whichever one was the second one.
I think it was also in the Time Meddler. It was like, or it was something along those lines.
Oh yeah, it was in the Time Meddler as well. Wow, they did that twice. I didn't realize they did that twice. If I had a nickel for every time the TARDIS fell off a cliff, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice.
Yeah, so they're kind of playing with that idea here, either intentionally or not, where you learn at the end that it is like it was the villain's master plan to have the Doctor, you know, not be able to use the TARDIS.
Yeah, for the first time you find out that, like, in story, it's intentionally being barred from the Doctor getting into it by the villain.
Right, and in that sense, Big Finish is like a sort of a medium between classic and modern Who, where it's like classic Who just had that like classic British TV thing where it's like a lot of the events of the episode seemed completely random, including the TARDIS being put out of commission in like not an interesting way, but just like weird ways, like falling off a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but like to me, those early eras of TV and sci-fi TV, I guess in particular, like so many of the events of the episodes seem like we even kind of see that on UFO, which we've been watching on Inevitable, a classic sci-fi podcast. Check that out. Like some of the events of the episode just seem totally random.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is kind of meeting classic and modern Who halfway, where it has those sort of classic elements, but they're more intentional.
But explaining them within the confines of the story, yeah. I see what you're saying. Reminds me in some way of we talked a lot about how the first season of the reboot was actually pretty similar to classic Who,
yep.
just with like better CG. So this kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, in an alternate universe where it's like Big Finish didn't go this route, but like Doctor Who was brought back, but it wasn't rebooted in the way that it was, in the way that it actually was. But it was just like, yeah, let's bring some of the Doctors back and throw them in these stories and type thing. Just anchoring Doctor Who in its past. I mean, hey, even the setup of this, with the 4 parts is, full on classic Who.
Yeah, they pretty much they do that for like pretty much all of their like original. They did that for all of the like main series audios, which has ended now. They've replaced it with a different structure.
Right.
But all their main series audios are like in 4 parts, and they do some interesting stuff with that later on. They do like 50-50, which is like two-part stories. They do I don't remember which one it's called. It's called like the Winter Cycle or something, where each story part they don't like follow immediately from each other. They tell one story, but like each is related to a different season.
Yeah. And so we should just touch on this because the monthly range actually ended pretty recently. I think it was like a year ago.
Yeah, 2021,
yeah.
I believe.
And so
they've replaced it with like quarterly box sets alternating between the Doctors. So I think it's still roughly the same amount of content per year, just now they just release it quarterly.
Yeah, because this was a pretty regular release schedule. I think in the early days it wasn't truly monthly, but once they got going, it was like literally one per month for 20 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just looking. It wasn't actually monthly to begin with. It was like this was July, the next one was October, November, January.
Yeah, I don't think it was monthly until like 2000. Sorry, 2000.
Yeah. Once they got into 2000, it was like literally one a month. Good for them. Good for them. Good for Nicholas Briggs.
Making bank on those paycheck. Big Finish audios.
I know. Cranking them out.
So they find Sancroft. He's not really giving any answers here.
Throughout this, we've heard reference. I think Ruth Lee has mentioned it a couple times, but we get reference to the Knights of Valicia. Yeah. We don't really know who they are yet.
We get the reference because Sancroft was the first knight of Valicia. Because right at the end of part 1, he gets attacked by someone. The Drudges are returning fire, trying to save them. So they're being attacked, and the people attacking them, who sound a lot like the Judoon but are not the Judoon because the Judoon haven't been invented yet, say that they're there to execute Sancroft because he's a war criminal. They kill Ruth Lee. Ruth Lee made a deal with these people to basically sell Sancroft out. And the Doctor's like, hey, look, maybe there's a misunderstanding here. And they say, we have no quarrel with you or the lady, but we can't have any witnesses, so you got to die too. And then that's where part 1 ends.
Yep. A nice classic Who style cliffhanger.
But is it resolved in the first 5 minutes of part 2?
I know. Part 2 is sort of a now for something completely different moment. We're on a submarine, a German one. So like a U-boat, I guess.
Yeah.
It's World War I. It's the Atlantic.
And it's the 5th Doctor.
And the crew. Yes. I actually thought that this was Colin Baker, a.k.a. the 6th Doctor, a.k.a. Sawbones
Hanks.
I know, the most like 13-year-old edgy like screen name.
Well, there's no XZX on either side, so...
Yeah. You mean lowercase x, capital X, lowercase x? Anyway, I thought it was Colin Baker at first, but it's actually the 5th Doctor. Their voices sound somewhat similar, I think.
I think that's just you. They don't sound similar to me at all.
Yeah. As soon as he started saying, Turlo, Tegan, where are you guys? I was like, okay, actually it is the Fifth Doctor.
Yeah, because the Fifth Doctor lands and he immediately gets a message just like, get back in the TARDIS. So he tries, but the door isn't opening. It's blocked. So he calls for Tegan and Turlo to let him in, but they're clearly not in the control room looking at the scanner. They're busy somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. The reason they showed up was that they were tracking a time distortion, which is constant throughout all the stories. You know, there's always some sort of distortion in time. Makes sense given the it's not really a frame story, but it kind of is, given the frame story like nature of what's happening here.
Well, you find out in part 3 that the Time Lords are trying to basically avoid their invasion by the Knights of Valicia. It's not exactly clear how the things that they're telling the Doctor to do will prevent this invasion. And the things they're doing seem to be mostly like trying to kill the Doctor, although they did try to get the Doctor to go back into the TARDIS at this point, and then it failed, except now, ironically, his attempts to get back to the TARDIS to fulfill that original message are what causes the distortion that they were trying to avoid in the first place.
Mm-hmm. So the Germans sink the ship.
Yeah, the Doctor's on.
And there are only 2 survivors, one being the Doctor, the other being a woman named Helen.
Well, there are other survivors. They're just all on the lifeboats, because when the Doctor gets onto the U-boat and he's trying to figure out where they are, he says like, oh, they sank the ship, but they hit the ship, but they didn't sink it until they knew that everybody was off on lifeboats, so this must be World War One.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I didn't remember that.
Also conveniently explains why the Germans just didn't kill the Doctor immediately as soon as they picked him up, because they waited for everybody to get... Their intention wasn't to kill everybody on the merchant ship. They let them all escape to the lifeboats first.
Yeah, they had that like little line of dialogue. It's like, we're not monsters or whatever. They talk about like they saved a dog or something like that, if I remember correctly. They're just like, we saved a dying dog, like why would we just kill a bunch of people type thing. So this sort of sets up the captain's character or whatever, which is he's sort of this honorable guy.
Yeah, Schmidt, I think is his name. No. Schmidt is the guard who tries to kill the Doctor.
Yeah, the captain, I don't remember his name. He probably had one, but yeah. Was it was it Schweiger?
Maybe.
Played by Mark Gatiss.
Classic Mark Gatiss. So the Doctor is trying to get back to the TARDIS, but Schweiger is like, "Hey, look, a big ship, a four.
What?
What's the word? It's 4 smokestacks." Because it's got 4 like smokestacks, they think it's either the Lusitania or the Aquitania, but they can't identify which. And the Doctor kind of bursts in. He's like, "Look, I'm a German spy, and I have proof that Americans are going to enter the war. You just need to get my blue box back." And they're like, "Yeah, right."
Mm-hmm. They don't buy it. Nice try, though, I guess. So the Doctor gets sent back to the brig. The brig being... I know, the brig being the cell, not the character. And there they meet Schmid.
Yeah, Schmidt starts attacking the Doctor for no reason, really. And the Doctor's like, "What's going on?" We then learn that Van Sel and the Lord President are basically controlling Schmidt from the future.
Yeah, we like, you get that almost right away, where it's like you're kind of hearing the Time Lords whispering telepathically and temporally into Schmidt's ear, like, "The Doctor, you have to kill the Doctor."
Yeah.
This is Van Sel, however you pronounce it. And this sort of starts a little bit of a dispute between him and some of the other Time Lords, because he thinks that their only recourse now is to kill the Doctor, because he's meddling, and he's presumably, you don't know fully at this point, but you can piece together that what he's doing is not beneficial to them ending the invasion.
Even though he's trying to end the invasion, it's not working.
Mm-hmm. So Vansel's like, all right, time to die, Doctor.
Schweiger saves the Doctor from Schmidt. He's like, what are you doing, Schmidt? But then Schmidt basically gets a gun when Vansel's like, you gotta kill the Doctor. They burst in, and the Doctor does actually get shot in the shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
But Helen gets Schmidt's gun from him.
Right.
The Doctor attempts to use the gun to basically bluff Schweiger into taking them back to the box, to the TARDIS, but Schweiger's not buying it because he's like, you won't kill me, Doctor. You don't have the wherewithal. And then Helen grabs the gun and is like, take him back or I'll kill you. And Schweiger's like, all right. There's like kind of an indication that Helen's not who she says she is because Helen can't speak German and the TARDIS translation circuits seem not to be working for Helen.
Yeah, this was interesting because usually just in media in general, if you are, going with like, all right, these characters are actually speaking a different language type thing, but it's all in English or it's all in whatever language it is, they won't be accented, right? Whereas here it's like, the idea is that all these characters are speaking German, yet they still are speaking in German accents.
Yeah. They even like almost lampshade this by saying that the Doctor's German is like textbook perfect. And like sounds almost like an Englishman speaking it.
Right. Yeah, I think they say like his grammar is like, it's not like how people actually speak. It's like, he learned it in school or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they get back to the TARDIS and lo and behold, it's locked.
The Doctor's like about to leave Helen behind. He's like, sorry, but I gotta go. And she's like, what?
I forget what this ends on a cliffhanger, doesn't it? I forget exactly what it ends on.
It's the U-boat sailing away and the Doctor like being left floating at sea on the TARDIS.
Right. Yeah. On to part 3. AKA CD or tape 2. That's one thing that listening to these now digitally doesn't have, which is that you need to swap either CDs or tapes.
I guess. It
is interesting that that both the tape and the CD require two tapes or two CDs. Then again, audio, it does take up like a massive amount of data, as we know, as podcasters or whatever. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, part 3 is the Sixth Doctor landing on a spaceship called the Edifice that's going to study the Kurgan Wonder.
Yeah, the Kurgan Wonder is like, it's a massive like gas cloud.
The beginning of part 3 also begins actually with the invaders breaking through the Gallifrey defense lines and revealing that they're the Knights of Valicia.
Mm-hmm, right, so connecting back to part 1.
So in part 3, they kind of are trying to look at the Kurgan Wonder, and the pilot is like taking them really close, but they kind of get hit by a time distortion.
Right. The idea here is that they're showing the Kurgan 1 to some sort of commission that is either going to accept it or deny it as like one of the 7 wonders of the galaxy or something like that.
Yeah.
And the Doctor, the way the Doctor fits into this is obviously he appears, and this is the 5th Doctor the 6th Doctor we should mention. Yep. And he's confronted by a waitress named Ellie.
Yeah.
Who, she thinks he's one of the commissioners, so she takes him to his seat, and then sort of he's watching the presentation, and that's when Azamenda, the guy flying the ship, brings it in close, and there's a massive time distortion.
Yeah. I think the Doctor actually partially confronts
Ellie,
because she's like in a place she shouldn't be, or the doctor's somewhere he shouldn't be.
There's something, I forget exactly what it is. There's something suspicious about her, as there is. And at this point, like in the story, you kind of get, okay, these are all the female leads from each part are like a different incarnation of one another. So it's kind of pairing the Doctor with another character who is similar to the Doctor, different incarnations type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something suspicious about her.
There's the most bizarre line in this entire story in part 3 when they're like asking the captain, someone's like asking if they trust the captain to fly that close, and the other guy says like, I would trust you to fly naked through a cheese grater or something like that. And I was like, wait, what?
So I would trust you to like get us unscathed through a cheese grater.
Yeah, naked.
He says naked? I don't remember that. But alright. Imagine just like cheese grating yourself.
No, thank you. No. Stop right there.
Anyway, the explosion, or whatever the distortion does, I think it's an explosion, causes death and destruction on the ship.
Everybody ages to death.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot that was the case. Except the Doctor and Ellie. And Azamenda.
They find Azamenda, who is revealed to be an android, so that's why he didn't age to death.
Yeah, I thought they said this before, but I might be wrong. That he was an android.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't remember finding out like after he wasn't aged to death.
They're attacked by some strange creatures, later on revealed to be mutated bacteria and viruses. Imagine if that's what like COVID was, instead of a virus, it was just like a mutated virus that like turned into a giant beast or something. I don't know. It was an actual like apocalypse event.
Yeah, that would suck.
Especially like, have you seen like microscopic images of like viruses? Like They look terrifying.
They're terrifying.
Yeah,
yes.
They look like aliens.
Yes.
Yeah.
Getting flashbacks to a close-up.
Yeah. UFO. Yeah. Apparently, like, there are actual, like, academics and people who actually, like, study viruses for real who think that viruses are, like, alien, or alien organisms, or, like, bio machines sent to Earth to clear Earth of like its life so that it could be inhabited by aliens. Because apparently they're so different from any other life form on Earth that like they're only semi-classified as life forms, first of all. But like their life processes, if you can even call it that, are so vastly different to any other form of life on Earth that some academics are literally just like, there's no way these are from Earth. There's no way they could have evolved into what they are. Couple that with the fact that you put them under a microscope and they literally look inorganic. I think they are inorganic, right? I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about, but clearly, but yeah. I'll put some links in the show notes because it's interesting stuff.
Well, anyway, the Doctor's like, we need to get back to the TARDIS, but it's trapped in the middle of the Kurgan Wonder. Mm-hmm. Inside the Turgon Wonder is the Temperon. And the last message the Time Lords are able to send is a message to the Doctor saying, don't release the Temperon.
Right. We get a little bit more about Ellie at this point. The Doctor is pretty suspicious about her, and he's not dropping his suspicions, so she kind of explains that she's not really there as a waitress, she's there as a spy. She works for an organization that has been trying to free the Temperon because it's been trapped at the center of the Kurgan Wonder and is in pain. And the Temperon, right. The Doctor is already familiar with the Temperon, I believe, and it's just a spatio-temporal creature.
Being, yeah.
Yeah. I just imagined it as like a whale type thing.
Me too.
Yeah. That's like the go-to, like, If there's a
space
creature, if there's like a
yeah.
massive space beast, like that's the go-to.
Actually, right as Amenda's saying the message, like, do not free the Temperon, he says, like, do not free, and then he gets shot by Ellie, and the doctor's like, why'd you do that? And she's like, he was going to kill us. And the doctor's like, no, he wasn't. So just piling more suspicion on Ellie.
Mm-hmm. I believe there's another... Oh, the doctor... Yeah, speaking of suspicion, the doctor also mentions that when he first ran into Ellie, she was carrying... She claimed to be a waitress, but she was actually carrying like some discs. Yes, to a
CD.
Control room. Right.
The CD of the Sirens of Time.
I know, yeah. That's like a Metal Gear Solid moment where it's like you have to find out like where the blueprints for how to destroy the machine are or the robot, and it's like they were encoded onto like a cartridge of Metal Gear. Okay, whatever. So the doctor's like, yeah, you're not who you say you are. But before they can do anything about that, there's another distortion in time, right?
Yeah. Into part 4.
The right before that, the doctor gets sent into the middle of the Kurgan Wonder, and the Temperon is there, and the doctor's like, all right,
smothering the doctor.
Well, the doctor is like, all right, look, I'll free you if that's what it takes. I'll free you, and he does. Yeah,
but the part ends with the Temperon just like crushing the doctor, like smothering him. He's like, no, please, I can't breathe. And then part 4 begins with the doctor revealing that he was just like being transported in time to Gallifrey along with his other 2 incarnations. Mm-hmm. And they all meet up and they go, wow, this is weird. We shouldn't all be here at once.
Really quick, at the end of part 3, the Temperon also says that in freeing it, the doctors also freed the Knights of Alicia.
Yes.
Just wanted to point that out. Now here we are in part 4. This is where, sort of an epic battle and mystery, both, across space and time have been set up here. And the payoff, or like where it goes, is not... It is not on the same level as what has been set up.
Well, the beginning of the episode is pretty interesting because they're figuring out what's going on. They make contact with each other to give each other, updates on what they're doing, and mm-hmm. They go, okay, well, so something's clearly wrong. Gallifrey has been pretty much wiped out by these Knights of Alicia, so we need to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I wonder how they figure that out. Gallifrey already looks like a nuclear... it already looks like ground zero. Like, how much worse could it get?
They figure out because nobody comes running to greet them.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So they snoop around for a little bit.
They get a warning from the Temperon, beware the Sirens of Time.
Mm-hmm.
They snoop around a bit, yeah, like you said.
We're introduced to, what was it again? Laina.
Oh, yeah,
it was Laina. Yeah, it was like, because it was like hyena, right, with an L.
Yeah.
She's clearly in charge, and she's bossing her subordinates around. And she has, like, the actual dumbest line from this, or just weirdest, where it's like, once the Lords of Time, now Lords of Nothing. I don't know, I just thought that was funny.
If someone comes in and is like, hey, there's 3 Time Lords still surviving, and they look on the camera and Laina is like, dang, it's the Doctor in 3 different incarnations, quick, go capture him. And then the Doctor pulls like a New Hope and like just jumps down the ventilation shaft.
Mm-hmm. I think, who was it? One of the Doctors gets captured so the other 2 can make their escape.
Yeah, the 5th Doctor the 5th Doctor is consistently actually captured twice in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
He also, they and they don't say this, but they choose him to be captured because he breaks his leg on falling down the ventilation shaft. The Seventh Doctor is relatively unscathed, and he insults the Sixth Doctor because the Sixth Doctor's like, hey, get off me, like, why are you so temperamental? And the Seventh Doctor responds with, well, thankfully your size cushioned my fall.
A little bit later, they go into like the Doctor's temperament and personality and how it's changed over his regenerations, and that actually is, like, I think, consistent with the Fifth, Sixth, and Seventh Doctor, right? If there's going to be one decoy, it's going to be the Fifth Doctor, right? Like, yeah. He's sort of the most I don't know, placid of all of them. It's sure as hell not going to be the Seventh Doctor, let's just say that.
Well, the Fifth Doctor gets captured. 6 and 7 go and see a room that's described as like a giant wardrobe for their armor. And then they see a Knight of Valicia get undressed, I guess. And he's like all scarred and falling apart and like, what's that condition where like parts of your body are necrotized? He's all necrotized.
Yeah. Not in good shape.
Meanwhile, the Fifth Doctor is simultaneously learning that this is because the Knights of Valicia have been cursed to essentially have to drain life force from other beings to maintain themselves, and the Time Lords are now the only beings left in the galaxy, in the universe, that can sustain the Knights of Valicia.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so, hey, speaking of viruses, I don't think this was like a viral infection, but it is explained as like a disease, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
And so the process that they saw with Solonik, who was the guy who removed his costume,
yeah,
was a revitalization process. Now things get a little info dumpy. They get a little. I mean, this is fine, I guess. It was definitely like kind of boring, but at the same time, there's 3 reversals here, right? Where it's like something is revealed to you, and it's like, but wait, actually, that was just an outer layer of the onion. You need to peel back a little bit more. They do that like either 2 or 3 times here.
3 times.
Yeah.
Well, so Laena explains that they use the Tempivore. Jeez, I'm thinking of the Chronovores, the Temperon, to pilot their vortex drives for their ships. God, the technobabble in this episode too. But that by doing so, the Temperon, perhaps intentionally, perhaps unintentionally, introduced a defect that every time the Knights of Valicia used the ships, their genetics were subject to a modification that caused them to basically die like they were. Also, they fixed the Fifth Doctor's leg, by the way. I don't know why that's important to mention, but...
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
So then the Doctors all... They don't all meet up, but then, like, Laena's like, I'm going to kill the Fifth Incarnation if you guys don't stop. But the Sixth and Seventh Doctors, like, meet... Well, actually, no, sorry, that's a little later. They meet up with Laena, and Laena's like, look, I really... And then she infodumps that, like, she was responsible for all of this, that the Fifth Doctor averted the sinking of the Lusitania, so, Alexander Fleming never discovered penicillin, so, like, super meningitis and super pneumonia, like, prevented the humans from developing a space program, so they never defeated the Knights of Valicia in space.
This is some Rube Goldberg, like, this butterfly effect, like,
the Seventh Doctor's
you went back in
presence.
time and kicked a stone 20 feet and and suddenly caused the apocalypse, right?
The Seventh Doctor's presence saved Sakharov, who then led the Knights of Valicia to invade Gallifrey, and the Sixth Doctor's presence is what allowed the Temperon to be captured and thus used to power the vortex drives of the Valician ships.
Yeah, one of the reasons why this got a little crazy to me was that, like, one out of these 3 things was like an Earth-related, thing that is kind of pseudo-historical, right? Mm-hmm. The other 2 are not. I don't know. There is sort of a bit of a, I don't know. it's sort of harder to accept or like enjoy once, it's either go all the way one way or all the way the other type thing in my mind.
I was okay with it. Anyway, Laina's like, I need you to use this Type 70 TARDIS to like avert all the changes because I've had my fun and I want to go back now. And they're like, okay. And they get in the TARDIS only to find out that the core of the TARDIS is burned out from Vansel landing on Gallifrey, breaking through the time barrier earlier. So then Laina's like, oh, well, she leaves for a second and then she comes back and the doctor's like, well, it doesn't work. And she's like, no, we can't use the Temperon. We can't use the vortex drives. It might affect you. And they're like, oh, no, we weren't going to use the vortex drives. We were just going to actually just use the Temperon. And she's like, you can't do that either. And they're like, well, why not? Like, I thought you wanted us to undo everything. And she's like, guards, capture them. The 6th and 7th Doctor, however, escape into the Temperon chamber. The 5th Doctor does not, once again being used as bait. The 6th and 7th Doctor talk with the Temperon. The Temperon now plot dumps that Laina is in fact not a Knight of Felicia. She is a Siren of Time who feed off of time distortions, and every time someone changes the timeline, it essentially creates these distortions that the Sirens feed off of. So they're like, oh, so we shouldn't go back and change everything. And the Temperon's like, no, if you go back, like, that'll create even more distortions for them to feed off of.
Right. So she's been using the Knights of Felicia the entire time.
She puts the 5th Doctor into a life extraction chamber and essentially threatens to basically wipe him out and kill the 6th and 7th Doctors too. And they're like, the Temperon's like, if you free me, I can destroy the Sirens of Time. And then the 7th Doctor's like, no, you can't. And everyone's like, what? And he's like, you're lying, aren't you? And the Temperon's like, yes, I am. The 7th Doctor's like, you would have destroyed the Sirens of Time years ago if you could have destroyed them, so you can't. But all you'll do is like lock yourself in an eternal battle with the Sirens of Time to keep them at bay. And the Temperon's like, yes, that's true.
Fine. You got me.
Laina's like, you would never force someone into, that, basically. You would never force someone to subjugate themselves that way, because I know you, Doctor. And then the 6th Doctor has this whole mini speech where he's like, yeah, but your mistake was bringing 3 incarnations of the same person here. Like, yeah, we all share the same core values, but me, more so than everyone else, I'm pragmatic. And he blows the device, keeping the Temperon there, and releases him, and the Temperon runs off to go reset everything. A literal Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, the Doctors are brought back to their respective timelines, and
they're actually all
to
just dumped with the 7th Doctor on the
unnamed
planet.
Yeah,
for
you're
some
right.
reason.
That's true. Yeah, and they hear what's her face, Helen, calling for help, and they're like,
"What's Elenia?"
It's Elenia. They hear Elenia calling for help, and they're like, "Nah."
Yeah, the 5th Doctor's like, you can't go back for her, right? 7th Doctor's like, I know. And then the 5th Doctor chastises the 6th Doctor for basically condemning the Temperon to a lifetime of imprisonment. The 6th Doctor's like, you're saying if you were in that room, you wouldn't have pulled that trigger? And he says, well, I don't know, maybe. And then the 7th Doctor says, boys, no arguing. Let's just get us all home. I think if we get to my TARDIS, I can put you guys back.
Yeah, the ending was so, I don't know, in a way it was so low-key. Like,
it's because it's basically just, and then it's done.
Yeah.
Vansel, there's a funny moment where Vansel shows up and he's like, did something happen? And they're like, no. Should something have happened? And Vansel's like, I thought something was going to happen, but never mind. It's like rerunning the beginning of the episode.
Right. So that's the Sirens of Time.
Yeah.
Interesting move to name the story after a villain that only appears in the final 5 minutes. But actually that's not true. They mention the Sirens of Time throughout. But a good move, I think, is you get to the end, or almost to the end, and you go like, wait a minute, like, wasn't this called the Sirens of Time? I wonder what that even means. And then all of a sudden they start talking about the Sirens of Time. You sort of you get more invested in it, but then I don't know. It doesn't it doesn't pay off, it doesn't it's just uninteresting. It's too faction wanky. right? It's the whole thing.
I mean, I think the problem for me is along those lines. Like how you described the Fifth Doctor's thing as a Rube Goldberg machine. This whole story is almost like parts 1, 2, and 3 set up this long Rube Goldberg machine of like who's behind everything, what's going on. And the first reveal, like, oh, the Knights of Valicia are behind this, and like it was basically just like Laena just wanting to like mess around with time, and they were actually doing it because they were dying, but they're dying because of their own hubris in capturing the Temperon. Like that reveal, I was like, okay, this is the final domino to fall, and like everything kind of made sense. Like the foreshadowing in the beginning with Sakharov being like the first knight of Valicia, and like the Knights of Valicia breaking through in part 3. And the explanation of like how the humanity never went to space, so they never defeated the Knights of Valicia, to prevent them from getting to Gallifrey. Like all the kind of dominoes fit together, but then like it just started revealing, like it was like don't look at the man behind the curtain kind of thing for like 3 more steps.
I know, this is like the final domino fell, and it fell into like a funnel that like just kept swirling down and down.
Like I think I would have enjoyed this much more if it had just been like Laena and the Knights of Valicia had been the villains all along, and that they had wanted to basically take control of time, but then them taking control of time led them into this like self-fulfilling prophecy where they're like being destroyed by the very thing that they wanted. And now they have to undo everything at the end of it. It's like, it would have been an interesting story because the story would have been the Knights of Valicia setting themselves up to be able to conquer time with the Temperon. But then the part 4 would have been them realizing now that they've basically doomed themselves to die, a long, protracted, painful death, and then having to undo that in part 4. That, I think, would have been a very good story. Or at least for me, that would have been more enjoyable, let me say.
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't know. You know, if I could probably always find something to complain about, even if that was the case. But hey,
sure, you can never know that like another version of the story will be better. I'm just saying, for me, like in theory, that setup would be better than what we got.
It does seem like the proximity of how it's all revealed, like the stuff about the disease and them having to do all this to save their people type thing. Being so quickly discarded to actually center in on like this thing of a more godlike being kind of controlling everything from behind the scenes. It does kind of diminish those like 5 minutes where we thought it was the Knights of Valicia and all of that. Where we thought they were the end game of everything, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but they weren't.
Yeah. What I'm saying is the stuff that comes after that kind of diminishes that story of them trying to save their people.
Yes. No, I agree. That's what I was trying to say, yes.
Yes. And then the Temperon stuff at the end kind of diminishes the Sirens of Time stuff, which is you're already sort of taken out of the moment by like it diminishing what came before.
Yes.
It is truly an onion layers being peeled, because every time you peel one of those layers, it gets smaller and less, filling. I imagine you're just biting into an onion here like an apple, so.
Disgusting.
I know.
That's disgusting. That is. I cringed when you said that. I don't think there's any vegetable I would want to bite into like an apple less than an onion.
Yeah, I don't know. Out of the normal, vegetables, I'd be hard pressed, I think, to think of another one. I'm sure there's weird vegetables out there that barely anyone in the Western world eats that, probably, or maybe, I don't know. You can call an avocado a vegetable. It's technically a fruit, but you could call it a vegetable if you want, and say that you don't want to bite into that, right?
I would bite into an avocado and then I would just spit out the peel. The skin, the peel. I'm imagining someone peeling an avocado now like an orange.
I don't actually bite into any fruit because my teeth are so messed up that I can't.
Awesome.
I know.
That's the Sirens of Time. Quite frankly, I don't have anything additional to waffle on about. I said my piece about this.
Yeah, a lot of these Big Finish stories are like this. They leave you, in my opinion, although this is an opinion from 5 years ago, so maybe not the most informed, and maybe this will change as we dive further into the main range. But a lot of them leave you unfulfilled, was my memory of it.
We did listen to a lot of early Big Finish. The ones that we listened to that were modern Big Finish, like the 10th Doctor audio, I remember feeling quite fulfilled by when we listened to that. As well as some of the more recent ones. I also remember liking Master.
Yeah.
But, so not all of them, and we'll see next week. One question I wanted to ask you, I guess just wrapping up at the end, we don't have any emails, and we didn't look up any actors, so we're pretty much done. But one question I wanted to ask you, and which maybe I was posing to myself too, just as a point of discussion, is like, if you had listened to this in 1999, let's say in June.
When I was 3.
July. Yeah, well, let's just say you're the age you are now. It's 1999.
Yeah. No,
you listen to this. Would you be like? Would you be inclined to listen to more Big Finish audios after this?
No.
Yeah, I kind of think the answer would be no for me as well. Or I don't know. It would be like it. This audio feels like celery, you know.
Oh my god.
You can eat it. It'll like fulfill your necessity of eating, but it just like leaves a hole in your stomach.
It takes more energy to digest than is worth, right? That's the whole thing with celery. Is like it. That's why people.
Yeah, I guess my point here is just like it fulfills your like desire for more Doctor Who content, but at the same time just leaves you feeling empty at the end.
It reminds you why the show was canceled. No, that's actually a hard question to answer though, because right now we're in the midst of new Doctor Who content coming out, you know, on TV with the 13th Doctor and all this. Despite how piecemeal it really is at this point. And plus there's the promise of the next season as well. At this point in time, you know, imagining it is 1999, there's nothing on the horizon. And so Big Finish is really it. So it's kind of hard to put myself back in those shoes, you know?
Yeah, you have no expectation that Doctor Who will ever be back. Basically, this is like the best you're going to get.
Right.
And maybe in that frame of mind, I would be inclined to listen to more, to be like, well, maybe it was just a fluke that it was...
Yeah.
The way it was.
Yeah, I might not write it off with just this one. I'd be like, you know, all right, let's just see where this goes type thing. And
yeah, exactly.
Speaking of where this is all going and where we're all going, we should probably explain before the very end that we've already listened to Phantasmagoria, which is the next audio in this range. But next week we are going to be listening to it again just because we don't remember anything about it.
Yeah. So we're going to revisit it. Why not, I guess.
Yeah, I read the premise of it, and even that, I was like, I have no memory of this.
Yeah, the premise didn't do anything for me.
The premise being the publisher's summary section here on the TARDIS Wiki page for Phantasmagoria, which I assume was whatever was on the back of the CD. Or just whatever is on Big Finish's site when you go to their page for it.
You know what? I'm like getting some vague memories are starting to come back. I'm getting some images.
Images? There's no imagery other than the cover.
I know, but I'm getting some like images that were described in the episode. I guess we'll see. We'll see next week. We might listen to the first part and go like, I remember the entire story now, and I remember why I deleted it from my brain. Well, I guess that's that for this episode. Mm-hmm. If you'd like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@doctorthevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on any of these first 10 Doctor Who audio dramas, or any of your thoughts on Doctor Who Redacted, which again we're going to cover at the end of these audio dramas as well. And if you have thoughts as you're listening along to that weekly, email us about those too. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, all at Trust Your Doctor, and you can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. Next time we're going to be re-listening to Phantasmagoria. But until then, the end.